you see it?
Yes. Are we live? Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to Education Connections. I am Peter Wuenschel. I chair the Education Division for the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. The Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce has a mission to be champions for business success and quality of life in our community. And we believe the foundation of business success and quality of life begins with the educational system. Education Connections will be a monthly series of conversations with leaders in our community. And these leaders are going to give us information on things facing education now and in the future. And today I'm very delighted to have with me Dr. Laura DuPont. Dr. Laura DuPont is with Clear Creek ISD, and I've decided she's going to do her full introduction. Tell us who you are, Laura.
Okay, thank you. And thank you first for starting this series and for doing it. I think it's a great thing to hear about the education piece and, the community, but it's wonderful to be here, and thank you for starting this off. So one of the first things I usually say about myself is I'm an industrial engineer by training. That's what I have: a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in industrial engineering. And my specialty within that is quality improvement and process improvement and looking at how to use processes. So I'm very passionate about, and the reason that ties into the school board position is I'm very passionate about using data, using knowledge of processes and process improvement to improve systems and to help people and systems drive towards continuous improvement and to drive towards excellence. So beyond that, though, my husband and I have both lived in the community. We live in Lake City, and we've lived there for over 28 years. I'm also a mom of 3 boys, one of whom is still at Clear Falls High School, and the other 2 are graduates of Clear Falls High School. I'm a lifelong learner myself, obviously with the schooling, but I continue to love to learn and in this position very much so. And I've been a volunteer the entire time that I've been in this community. And as my children started getting into school, that turned into PTA, and it turned into booster clubs, and it turned into other volunteering with activities such as robotics and science fair and all kinds of things like that were going on in the district. And so at some point I decided, okay, I'm getting a lot of different aspects of this district, and I want to use my training and my passion in quality and in learning and in processes to try to put a different aspect and contribute to the district in a different way. And so I decided to run for the board. So in 2013, I got elected to the District 1 position on the Board of Trustees. I became one of 7 trustees on a very, very high performing school board. And I've learned a lot since then, and it's my passion to keep that going because of what it does for the district. I actually want to give a thank you here to the chamber for the forums that you do, the one that you just held on Tuesday. I know that you've been doing that for over 10 years, I'm sure. And I participated in it when I ran for the board, and that's just a thing that we know that you do when you're running for the board, is participate in the Clear Lake Forum, the Chamber Forum, because it's a way to inform the community about what a trustee is and what the board does and what's going on in education. So we really appreciate that connection. And it's an example of one of the community aspects of what you do for the board and for the district. And I do want to talk about, I'll go into a little bit about the makeup of the board, because I said I came on as a District 1 trustee. So within CCISD, there's 5 different districts, and they mostly follow the 5 comprehensive high school attendance zones. And that information is, you can go to the district website and you can find a map and you can find out which district you're in if you don't know. But probably it's the district where your children are zoned to high school, associated with the number. There's also 2 at-large positions. Those positions are voted on by the entire school district. Everybody here every eligible voter can vote for an at-large position. So those are the 7 people that make up the school board. Once you are elected onto the board, each member of the board, each of the 7 trustees represents all 42,000 children. So we don't just work for our own district. That's a group of voters where the vote comes from. But once you're on the board, you're working for the children. You're working for 42,000 children. And that's important. And then the other thing I want to note is the word trustee and the trust part of that. So as a trustee, we are guardians of the public trust. And I actually want to go into Article 7 in the Texas Constitution, because we go all the way back to that proclaims that public education of Texans is essential to the preservation of our liberties and rights. And further, going into Texas Education Code, it's very explicit in saying that the mission of the public educational system of this state is to ensure that all Texas children have access to a quality education that enables them to achieve their potential and fully participate now and in the future in the social, economic, and educational opportunities of our state and nation. So public education is our moral imperative, and that's what we share as a board. That is our goal. That's in front of us all the time, and that's the commitment we make when we are on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the word moral imperative, because education, as I mentioned in our opening, really is the cornerstone of a strong workforce. It's for a strong community. So that's awesome. So I do know that governance is a main piece of what a board of trustees is responsible for. So can you speak to the area of governance?
Sure. And I'll say a little bit, there's 5 kind of key roles of the Board of Trustees, and all of those come together to form governance. One is collaboratively setting the mission and the vision for the district, what is the direction we're going in. The second is adopting policies that inform the district actions. The third is evaluating the superintendents and really the performance against those. Are we moving in the right direction? Are we still moving that direction? And is student success happening? And then approving the annual budget, because you need the resources to make all those other things happen. And then the 5th piece is really community interaction and advocacy. And that's a huge piece too. So there's those 5 pieces of it. And really it's about ensuring that the district is doing what it says that it's doing. Everything that we put in place together. It's a collaborative process, not only with the superintendent and with the administration and everything going on, the teacher, everybody is involved in it. So it's a collaborative process, but we want to make sure that we're moving in that. And the other piece of it is that the community has input into that, because we always get community input in what we're doing. So that ensures that we're moving in the direction that the community wants to move in. It is important to note that on an effective board, you've got 7 very different, amazing people that bring all kinds of different strengths to the board, and they are very different. All of us come from different backgrounds and different places and different careers, and we all bring that to the board. But once we get on the board, really you want to set aside your personal differences and personal agendas and all of those types of things, and really focus on the decisions and the activities of the district and the outcomes that are best for students. And taking into account the needs and the values and the expectations of the community also. So it's a very big enterprise that's going on there, and something that the board does. People often ask about, they hear us as trustees talk about the team of 8, and that's a very important concept, because simply it's the 7 trustees plus the superintendent that make up the team of 8. But actually there's a lot more in there, because as a board, we have this moral imperative. High-performing boards are really committed to each other and to the superintendent to work together towards the best interest of the students in the district and what's going on in the district. When we meet together in our regular meetings or committee activities and things like that, there's a whole administrative team that the board works with. And we have to trust that they've been hired in the positions. They know what they're doing. They know the kind of the expert opinion on things. And we need to seek to understand that and figure out how it fits into the best interest of the students.
Absolutely. A couple of things I've heard you say is individuals come with their own skills and talents, but you have to come together specifically on governance. What kind of training support do you have in order to fulfill that role of governance? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. There's a number of different trainings. Some of it is mandated by the state level. So when you first get on as a trustee, there's about 30 hours of training that are required within your first year And some of those within, probably over 16 of those hours are within the first 90 to 120 days that you're on the board. And that training is in different categories, and it's mandated by the Texas Education Agency, or TEA. And so the biggest place that you first get your training is through what people hear trustees talk about, TASB. TASB is the Texas Association of School Boards. And that's really the premier organization that keeps all of the things related to school boards together. And they actually keep our policies too and help us on track with that. So learning those processes and what you do as a trustee comes from them also. So there's initial trainings that are just very, how do you work? What are open meetings is the very first training that most trustees usually get. There's also trainings specifically related to evaluating and improving student outcomes, which is a very big, that's the ultimate thing of what we need to do, right? And that's also training that all trustees need to get on a continuing basis. So there's things that you need to get as an initial trustee, but then there's things that you have to get, and there's a certain number of hours, it's probably 12 to 15 hours that every trustee needs to get annually. And that also, some of it is defined, some of it is about student safety and now computer aspects of things and student outcomes and performance. And so there are things that we get that way. We go to annual conferences that are put on by TASB to get, as an ongoing trustee, that you get that training. We go to our regional service center, the Region 4. We are part of Region 4 in the state, which is the largest region in the state. And we go to Region 4 to get training on an ongoing basis. We do that. Some of the training that we get as individuals, and some of the training we do as a team. And that team is the team of 8, because we'll have meetings throughout the school year that are really team building meetings, where we're learning in there too, and about how to improve ourselves as a board. And how are we going to implement that within the district? So a high performing board is really focused not only on learning individually about our job and what it is, but it's also focused on how do we help each other grow as individuals and in our role as a trustee. Okay.
Now, these two questions may relate together, because I've heard you talking about student success. One of the things that I hear in the community a lot is the issue of accountability within education, with the STAR test, with the grading, the A through F. Can you speak to how governance relates to student success, and then how that is related to accountability?
Yeah, it's a big, meaty question, and really, but that's the ultimate thing that we're here for. That's what we support as a board. So it's a very important question. So, and I'd start with saying the biggest piece of that in fitting the governance into student success is really aligning all of the goals and activities of what you're doing. So collaboratively with the superintendent, with input from the community, we'll set up a vision and a mission for the district and strategic plans for how are we going to go forward. Then somehow you have to activate those. And the way that those are activated within the district is through something called superintendent targets. And those are annual targets that we set, which they come out of the strategic plan. These are the things that we need to be doing. And then they're assigned measurable indicators for each one of them, so we know how we're doing along them. And then once those are set at the board level, they're then taken to the campus level, they're taken into departments within the district. So everything, and they all do the same process. They set their own, how do they fit into that mission? And then they set their goals and indicate and use many of the same indicators. But as you go down to those other levels, you have even more indicators, which are more specific to the schools. So then that's at that level. And then so that it starts at the board, it goes throughout the organization, and then through the year, the board looks at those things and pulls it back up to the board level so that we can see how are things moving along. And really what that does is align all of the activities in the district. And I want to make the point that the important thing is that the core mission never changes for the district. We have this mission, and right now our mission is for every child to contribute, to achieve, contribute, and lead with integrity. And so that at a very high level, that captures everything. But as you can imagine, there's lots of things within that. And how do you make that happen? I want to kind of give an example of how it all works using the pandemic.
Okay.
Because as COVID hit last March, we had to adjust in terms of what was happening. We took we started with even in March, the administrators were figuring out, okay, how are we going to need to change things as we go into the next school year? Because obviously things are changing fast. They came up with in June, we pulled together a committee of people from the community. That committee was able to figure out what are some of the things that are important to us as we move forward. A plan was put together. That plan then was used as we went into the school year. In the beginning, it meant having an extra week for teachers to learn because there were all sorts of new things to learn. Then a little bit later, it meant extending the time that we brought in the initial students into the school because they needed more time to get used to things. But what it ultimately meant, it allowed us to pivot every time and keep going. And what it ultimately meant is that we brought kids back into school, and they've been in school ever since and learning in some way. And there are some doing it at home, there are some doing it in school, but ultimately what's still important is that overall mission and that we're still focused on student success. And then the accountability piece, lots of people think about the A through F system when you think about accountability, which is the state accountability system. But it doesn't really tell us a whole lot about students. And so we have all other kinds of accountability systems that are going. One for us is the community-based accountability, where we actually think about what's important to our community, and then we measure things relative to that. There's the grades and individual things going, teachers have things on an ongoing basis within a classroom. There's performance accountability of teachers, of administrators. The superintendent targets are for the superintendent. We have accountability for what we're doing. And then there's things on the more financial side. The first system is one that it goes on slowly the financial side. And as a high performing team, this district has won awards in all of those different categories. So we have amazing things happening in accountability across the board with what's actually going on. Some of these forms of accountability look at the end results, and it really is about showing that you're doing well. That, in other words, that's kind of called summative assessments. It's a summary of what's going on. But then also, and what's even more important, is the formative assessments. Because summative assessments, or those summaries, they don't really help you improve that much. The formative assessments are things that happen throughout a year, throughout some time period. And those give you ongoing information. And if you think about students, it might be like benchmark tests and things like that. If you think about a teacher, it might be evaluations where somebody comes in and looks at them and give suggestions for how they're doing. The superintendent gets it on the superintendent targets. The board looks at those and goes through time. And so there's a lot going on there in terms of getting information in a lot of different ways. And all that information is important in order to drive improvement. As a board, one of the things is, out in the community, we always hear, well, why is it always 7-0 votes? How is that even possible? And really, 7-0 votes are an example of good governance. That's when good governance is going on, because what that says is everybody is aligned with the mission of the district, and we're getting the information needed to drive those decisions with the ultimate goal of doing what is right for the students. You will, most effective superintendents don't want to bring something to the board for a vote if they don't know that it's going to be a 7-0 vote, because they want to get the right information out to the trustees so the trustees understand how that impacts student success. And so really those votes, you're considering each other's perspectives, you're considering what's going on. Everything we do is in an open meeting. The community can hear things that are going on, go back and look at recordings and see every meeting. What you also don't see is or what some people don't know about, they're used to the regular meetings on the fourth Monday of the month, but on the second Monday of the month, we have a workshop. And at that workshop, those are really discussions. There usually is not as much vote, if anything, voted on, but it's discussions where the trustees can ask questions about, how does this fit in the district? What's important here? What's going on? Sure. And so by the time you actually vote on that at a future meeting, you've had a chance to ask questions, figure out what's best for the students, figure out how it fits in, and you're together on the same page when you get to a meeting. So it's not really as much of a mystery as it sometimes might seem.
Thank you for sharing that, because the whole issue of a 7-0 vote could come across as, okay, this is a rubber stamp board.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hear you saying is, in that second Monday, you're doing a workshop, and that's where the dissent, and it's okay to have dissension as we're making very, very important decisions on education. And what I hear is that you actually work through that. And so you are hearing a voice that you might not otherwise hear, and then you come together. So that's wonderful, wonderful to hear. I do want to hear, I heard you mention the community involvement, and that's important to me because I've been a member of this community for about 25 years, and I've been chairing the Education Commission, the Education Division for the Clear Area Chamber. So talk about how the community should be involved in education, and specifically with the Board of Trustees.
So, and I said at the beginning that one of the things is that one of our roles is to communicate with the community. So we're a pathway in both directions. People can come to us, and we can then take that information to the superintendent and to the rest of the board and talk about it. But it's also for us to communicate things out to the community. And so, and this community is amazing. That's one of the amazing things about our school district, is the support that we get from the community. And the organizations within the community, the relationships with chambers. It's so important as trustees to have those relationships with the chambers, with BAHAP in this community, with the communities in schools and other organizations that directly support our schools. And then through the Education Foundation, there's all kinds of organizations out there, most of which are members of your chamber that help support the district in some way. And sometimes that means in financial ways, sometimes that means in programs for students and enhancing programs for students. But having that relationship with the community and being able to get those connections going is super, super important for trustees. I did want to know, and we do that in all different ways. We have a consortium in Galveston County, that's all the school districts in Galveston County, and the trustees work together to advocate at the state level for our school districts and our children. At the state level, we work through TASB and meet other trustees throughout the state that are interested in things. I'm actually, Paige Rander and myself are graduates of Leadership TASB, which is where we meet a small group of other trustees in the state and go out to other districts and get best practices and see what's happening throughout the state. The other night at the forum, at the end, you mentioned that Dr. Matt Robinson was in the audience, and he was actually Paige's guest for that evening. He is actually right now a State Board of Education member, but before that, he was a trustee in Friendswood ISD, and many of us worked with him and learned with him when he was a trustee in the state. So now we have that relationship, though, with a State Board of Education member. I actually went through Leadership TASB with Audrey Young, who is another, just got on the State Board of Education. So in the work that we do through TASB, our training and our learning and everything else, we get to know lots of people, and all those things are important when advocating for children and when getting more things going within the district.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I guess one of the testimonies I have with regard to our Board of Trustees, you mentioned that they are very high performing. I've been a member of this chamber for over 20 years, I think, and I've been to other chamber events outside of the Clear Area Chamber of Commerce. And there have been times when I've seen a friction between the district and the community. And I will say that the Board of Trustees truly, truly does listen to the community, and particularly the business community, as we share here at the Chamber of Commerce. I do want to touch on an area that is sometimes very confusing, and if you could sum something up real quick on school financing, and I know it's difficult to understand, but I know as a Board of Trustees you have some kind of handle on that. Tell us about school funding.
We do, and it's hard to explain. And there are some, when we go to trainings, it's often said that there's one law firm and a few people in that law firm in the state, and they're the only ones that can explain the school finance system. Although some of that changed in the last legislative session with House Bill 3. Because House Bill 3 was our latest kind of overall change in the school funding system. As I noted in the beginning, the Constitution says that we're going to do public education. The original intent was a 50-50 commitment, 50% of that coming from the state and 50% coming from the local districts. We also say in this state that we're going to fund it through property taxes. Different states fund education in different ways. There are other states that also use the property taxes, and we're one of them. So those local property taxes that you pay every year, that's the main way that education is actually funded. We're actually funded on a formula though. So when you pay your taxes, not all that money necessarily comes back to the district. Yeah. And the other thing is that when those taxes are, we set a tax rate. We get in terms of you've all heard about two bunches. There's a maintenance and operations and a debt service fund. And really, I'm talking about the maintenance and operations right now because that's what funds the day-to-day activities, and that's funded on a budget. And that's funded on the money that we get from that initial tax piece. As the local contribution goes into that, the state contribution, as the local contribution goes up, the state contribution goes down. And really so people always ask, well, why are my property taxes going up, the amount I pay, when, and where is this going? Is this just going into the schools? Well, our tax rate has actually gone down. And some of that was because of House Bill 3. A lot of it was. And so the tax rate has gone down, but the property values have gone up. And we don't set property values. And that's partly the state looking at that too, saying, well, we need property taxes coming from the districts because that's what's funding education. So even though our tax rate is going down, the property values are going up. As more of that money comes into the district, the state contribution goes down. And right now we're at about 74% being funded by our district, local property taxes, and only about 2% from federal funds. And then the rest of it is coming from the state. And that's one of the things that we're always advocating for is let's get that to a more even contribution. So it isn't all coming from, or that higher percentage is not coming from local property taxes.
Thank you. I understand it now. When I walk away, I may not understand that. That's usually what happens with school funding. So I do appreciate it, but I know where to go if I need more information. So I've been in this district for over 20 years, and you have mentioned high-performing boards, and I want to speak to that because we have an election coming up. And I think it is important for us to continue to have a high-performing board. So can you speak about the election coming up and who's running, or not who's running, but what positions are up, where people can vote, and I'd like to end on that so that we the audience here will know if they live in the district that they can vote. So
right. So the biggest piece I want to say that's one of the most important. I've said a lot of different aspects of what a high performing board is and how we keep that and why we want that. And a big piece of that is stability. That's what's kept us going, and that's what's kept us going very well and kept CCISD performing very well at high levels. The biggest word I would say here also is transitions. We have so many transitions going on right now. There's COVID, it has just changed everything. It continues to change things if you think about going into next year. There's teachers that have had to do online learning and do both online learning and in person, and what happens in the future. There's students that have maybe went online, that went back to brick and mortar, and now they maybe want to go back online. Maybe they found out it was good. So there's transitions happening there. So there's and there's always those transitions. But what you want, those transitions are going to be happening. You want to still keep your eye on that main goal and the student's success and the achieve, contribute, and lead with integrity. Yeah. And so when you have a board that's working together with that as their goal, and moving the district along, you want to sustain that stability and the integrity of the things that are happening on the board. So that's really, really important. In terms of the actual details, so we actually have 3 seats up this year. The board rotates through, so there's 2 seats up, and then 3 in 1 year. This year it's District 4, which is mostly the Clear Brook attendance zone, District 5, which is mostly the Clear Springs attendance zone, and then one of our at-large positions. An at-large position, so District 4, only if you live in that zone can you vote for that position. District 5, the same thing. But every voter in this district can vote this year because we have an at-large position up. So no matter where you live in the district, you get to vote for that at-large position. So everybody here needs to be going out and voting and getting informed. You're on listening to this, which is important. The actual election day is on May 1st. And I think now there's something up on the screen that actually shows that and when that is. However, I would push you down to the bottom of the screen, the www.ccisd.net, to get the information, because don't wait till May 1st. You can actually do early voting. Early voting starts on April 19th. And we actually have some very traditional places that everybody knows about, our early voting places. One is the ESC, the Education Support Center, which is over by Clear Creek High School. And that's kind of the main operations of the district over there. The Learner Support Center, which is the old 9th grade center over at Clear Lake High School on Falcon Pass Elementary there. Clear Brook High School is another early voting locations. Those three have been early voting locations for a very long time. This year, we actually added another early voting location at Creekside Intermediate. And that really is for the west side of League City. I'll tell you that you can vote at any one of these locations, which is nice. You can go any of them. But that really was we've had so much growth over there on the west side of League City that it was important to get an early voting location over there. So early voting locations, for the first Monday through Friday are certain times. They get even longer on that Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday following that. All of that can be found on the district website, the actual times. And so I encourage everybody to go out and vote early. Actually, historically, most of our votes come in early voting because it's nice to be able to go where you want and when you want. And then on election day, I would point, there's at least 2 locations, well, there actually are 2 locations in every one of the 5 districts, and then an extra one over in Nassau Bay because we have an agreement with them. And so on election day, you actually have to go to the location associated with your precinct, and all of that, again, is always up on the website, but it's up on there right now, too. So you can actually, if you don't know it already, you can
ccisd.net. ccisd.net.
So I encourage everybody to go to the polls and be part of the local governance process. This is this is as close as you can get to being part of the governing system and being part of democracy and getting together a school board. I mean, the school is the center of the community. The district is the center of what's going on here. And we find that in disasters that happen, even just recently in the pandemic and the winter storm, and being able to help the cities. You're really close, and we're an important thing. And come view our meetings online, come to our meetings, talk to us. Good stuff going on.
Fantastic. Dr. DuPont, Laura, thank you so much for being here. This is our first Education Connections, and it couldn't have gone better. I really appreciate the timeliness of this. I appreciate the hard work that you do and the Board of Trustees. We did do our candidates forum, and I'm excited about the people who are running. So please go out and vote. Again, ccisd.net. You can get all the information. Thanks again for tuning in. This was our first Education Connections. Our next Education Connections is on May 13 at 12 noon. And we will be hearing from Terry Crawford. Terry Crawford is the Vice Chancellor of External Relations at San Jacinto College, and she is the new Executive Director of San Jacinto College Foundation. I'm really excited to hear about what she has to say. You can go to the online calendar at clearlakearea.com anytime for upcoming programs. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you on May 13th. Thank you, Dr. DuPont.
Thank you.